Hi, I'm going to be talking about the Edward Scissorhands film by Tim Burton that was released in 1990. It offers a really good look inside of Tim Burton's fantasy world that can be said to represent who he is. This film is being a very personal story of how he felt growing up and more specifically about how society treated him. Burton has been outspoken on the problems in his childhood relating to this. In fact, he'd always defined himself as a loner. Edward, in the same sense, is alone, as he was created but was never completed, because his inventor passed away suddenly. He was about to introduce Hands to Edward and complete him. When introduced to society, however, Edward realizes how much of an outcast he is based on the ways others treat him. This film starts out in a very colorful neighborhood full of gardens and single-family houses. There's not a single black car, door, or item of clothing in the neighborhood. In all of this color, an old decrepit mansion stands out in the back and on top of a hill. You can tell that it stands out. It's gray and black with echoes of German expressionist cinema. When the main character, Peg, who goes door to door advertising visits homes around the neighborhood, she finds Edward alone in this mansion. She immediately grasps the situation that he has and feels like this can be solved with kindness and brings him to her house. Burton shows us how difficult it is to be accepted when you're not like everyone else. He awakens curiosity in some and fear in others. How we see the neighbors who gossip, they spread rumors and criticize her for bringing him in because he doesn't look like them and he's strange. Peg brings him home with her, and through a series of events, Edward gets mixed in with her neighbors, who are amazed by the outcast's unusual charm. It was something about Edward that intrigued them and pulled them away from their boring lives. When his neighbors start admiring him for his ability as a hairdresser and a gardener, he actually gets popular, and they even offered up to set up a beauty salon for him. Edward and Peg are guests on a TV program where they explain Edward's situation, and the audience comments and asks questions. It's interesting to see how different becomes an attraction, and it triggers fascination. Edward is now no longer different, and he's considered special. Peg isn't like the other women populating her and her little side of suburbia. As a woman who makes a living by finding the beauty in everyone, she overlooks Edward's outward appearance. As we see that he has a lot of black, he has very spiky hair, he, scratches all over his face, and he doesn't talk much, or at all, rather. So she overlooks his appearance to see a very fragile, innocent, and scared person. Much of much is made of the women in this community, bored with their home lives, whether married or single, and they're very nosy and clinging to gossip. However, they're just as lonely as Edward, and desperately eager for something new and different. Later in the film, he slowly breaks out of his shell due to his budding love for Peg's teenage daughter, Kim. However, Edward Scissorhands doesn't follow the conventional love story model. The intimacy shared between him and Kim is very brief. Unlike most fairy tales, this one has a tragic ending. Conflicts return when Edward agrees to help Kim and her boyfriend commit a crime. This is when we return to Edward being looked down upon for being different. Society starts to see him as a monster, someone who is dangerous and thus needs to be eliminated. The neighbors who once so admired how talented he was are now afraid of him. They make up stories and want to see him dead. So what can we learn from this film? Many lessons are learned by Edward and by the community from Edward's visit. It's very hard to pinpoint who the antagonist would be in this film because in the end nearly everyone turns against Edward except for his family, the ones who took him in. The theme of the story was to basically confront the viewer with an ironical aspect of being fitted into society. Conformity and its struggles radiate throughout this entire film. A prime example would be when Peg brings Edward down to live with her, which is the beginning of this film, and starts to immediately change him by putting new clothes on him. Then she tries to cover up the scars on his face. Burton, the director, uses a variation of the classic horror theme exemplified by the story of Frankenstein. As Burton horrifically captures the way small-minded society so readily and rabidly turns on what is different and strange. What they fail to see is a human, and so quick they are to out him that they begin to mistake his genuine kindness for malice. He's completely innocent, completely naive, misunderstood. That was a Frankenstein creation that unfortunately stuck with Scissorhands. I hope you enjoyed this brief commentary of one of my other favorite films, Edward Scissorhands, and I hope you enjoyed and learned something new. Thank you.